No more Zion Williamson for this season. I'll tell you why shutting him down is a tougher choice than you might think, even given the tanking situation going on in the NBA. It's Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with you on this Tuesday. Been a heck of a 2 weeks here, so I'm sorry for another missed show. I will do a makeup show this weekend. Tomorrow's show you're not going to want to miss. We're going to talk about the Grizzlies firing Taylor Jenkins here. But we're back today. We're going to talk about Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum being shut down. No real surprise here. We'll get into that. I want to look at Antonio Reeves and his really good play and something that he's doing that makes him a future piece for this team. And then I saw the best solution to tanking I have seen yet, and I want to share it with y'all because that's a bit of a theme of today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen every day, Monday through Friday, to Locked On Pelicans here. We got a whole lot more to cover. We got a lot of draft. I'm going to get into head coaching stuff yesterday because there was actually a really insightful article that I'm going to share with y'all about that and what it could mean for the Pelicans and the Grizzlies and a couple of things when it comes to Taylor Jenkins, Willie Green, and all the like in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. So let's start with the big news of the day, and that is the Pelicans shutting down due to injuries Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum here. They announced today that that CJ McCollum, Zion Williamson will miss the remainder of the season due to their respective injuries. McCollum, who's diagnosed with a right foot bone contusion after sustaining the injury on March 23rd at Detroit, will continue his rehabilitation program, which includes rest and treatment. And Zion Williamson, who suffered a low backbone contusion as the result of a fall during the game on March 19th at Minnesota, will continue his recovery plan, which includes rest and treatment. So, look, whether these are injuries or not, this is probably the correct move for New Orleans in any capacity, right? This is no real surprise. And when you look at some of the egregious tanking going on in the NBA, we're looking at you, Philly and Utah. None of this is shocking whatsoever when it really comes down to it, because this is a good draft. Look at the players in the Final Four now who are going to be drafted here, including Cooper Flagg, kind of the prize pick of everything there. But you see these guys and they look like they can be difference makers, so teams are going to prioritize their future, which is an important thing to do. And frankly, given that CJ hasn't played for the past couple of games, Zion hasn't played for the past couple of games, yeah, they were basically out for the season. We weren't expecting to see Zion Williamson play at all. For the most part, the Pelicans have been tanking since midway through the month of March, let's say. It's the end of March when I'm recording this. So this all checks out, and it's truthfully probably the correct decision. But I do think it's a harder decision than you realize. So while it might be the correct one, I don't think this was necessarily like, let's shut him on down, not play him anymore, right? You're in the midst of a really tough year. You're looking to try and sell hope to fans and things like that. You need to do something like that. It's actually a rather important part of just, I don't know, being a fan of a team is having hope that your franchise will figure it out in some capacity. To do that, you got to see guys play. You can sell draft picks on all that, but we don't know what that's going to be for the Pelicans. So, if you end up with the 7th overall pick or something like that, you can't sell that as much as you can a top 1 or 2 pick or 3 pick in this draft. So you need to sell the players you currently have. And that would be Zion Williamson. Lesser extent, CJ McCollum. We know what he's capable of. But Zion is the franchise, right? We're going to look at that when we talk about Antonio Reeves next. It's Zion Williamson. That is the key thing to everything. We love Trey Murphy. We love these other guys too. But it's the world, it's Zion-centric. That's what the Pelicans franchise orbits around here. And so having him play, I do think would be an important thing. We're seeing him play some of his best basketball of his career this season, but he's going to finish playing only 30 games. And that's not an easy thing to sell. This year was supposed to be different. The injuries happened. Then Zion came back, wasn't playing the second night of back-to-backs, looked pretty good. Can you sell that as hope? But when he's going to miss the final, let's see, how many games here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Final 12 games of the regular season. Though he played incredible and looked unbelievable, right? You kind of forget about it if you don't play the final 12 games of the regular season or whatever number it might be. We are prisoners of the moment to some extent here. You want to play him. You want to showcase him not just to your fans, but the rest of the league too. And now, while it's obvious why they are shutting him down, it's tanking. They want to prioritize the draft pick. You're basically battling with Philly and Brooklyn at this point for the 4th spot. New Orleans has 21 wins. Philly has 23 wins. So it's close. It's a 2-win difference there. And I don't know if Philly's going to win a game the remainder of the season. New Orleans might not either, to be honest with y'all. We'll look at the remaining strength of the schedule here in a second. You're in a pretty pitched battle when it comes to tanking. So this is the right thing. But now Zion plays under 40 games, under 31 games. This is common for him. And it just feels like you lose some of the progress you had with Zion, even though he was playing exceptionally well. And that is slightly disappointing, even if we logically understand the reason why. And that's something that will linger here a little bit, right? I think it's also fair to say, does he want to play? Is he going through this period where it looks like, when he wants to play and when he's his best version of him, he looks incredible. But is he always that guy? Looked like he turned a corner this year with it. Fight to play. Could he even do that? I don't know. So maybe that's kind of unfair to say and unfair to put on him. But it's one of those things of, I don't know. I don't know if they would have won a ton more games going forward, even with Zion playing. They're 10-20 with him playing this season, right? They weren't a good team. It's just kind of as simple as that when it comes down to it. I wanted to see him play, and I'm sure the Pelicans wanted to see him play as well to finish the season on a high note, something that he's just never been able to do. No point in his career has he finished the season really on a high note, and that's been super disappointing, and that's something that we have wanted to see. And so since that hasn't been the case, it would have been important to try and get to there, I think, this year. But given the tanking battle going on, yeah, they're doing the right thing, but I don't think it was the most easy decision for this team to make. So coming up next, let's switch from tanking to talk about Antonio Reeves, given his really good play as of late. And then we'll get back to tanking in the 3rd segment of today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. So that's all coming up here. You're going to want to stay for the 3rd segment. This way to fix tanking is kind of wild, and I love it. And I'll tell you what that is. It's coming up here a little bit later in the show in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. So when I started using Monarch Money, I noticed how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I can budget smarter and save more. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Today's episode of Locked On NBA or Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. Baseball season has started. It's in full swing, even with their torpedo bats. And there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. Taking Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run and Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base seems like a pretty good bet. And it's really just that easy. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And don't forget about the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate Pelicans and NBA coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. So let's switch gears from tanking. We'll get back to that because I loved this idea that The Athletic put out. But I want to look at Antonio Reeves, who I think is playing really good basketball for the New Orleans Pelicans right now. And I'm happy to see that he is being given more minutes, more responsibility for the most part over these past 3 games. And he's going to just have an outsized role going forward. And I think this is definitely the correct move for him. He looks like a future piece of this team, a future role player, rotation guy for the New Orleans Pelicans. And when you look at, his per game numbers, it's nothing insane here. 5 points per game, 1.2 rebounds, 0.7 assists, 0.4 steals, but he's shooting it really well from 3. He's shooting 43% from 3 on 2.2 attempts per game, and that's in 11 and a half minutes. When you push him out to per 36 minutes, he'd be averaging 16 points per game, 3.6 assists, 3.6 rebounds, 2.3 assists, a steal per game, along with making 3 3-pointers per game. He'd be taking about 7 threes per game, making 3 of them at what he is doing here. He is just playing well, frankly. And when you look at his shot profile, this is what impresses me the most. He's shooting threes or he's shooting in the paint. Now, he's not getting into the restricted area a ton. That's just not his game. He's not an above the rim finisher. He's not an elite finisher at the rim or anything like that. But look, he can get close to the basket. He can get close to the basket, and I will take that. And a good chunk of his shots, still 21%, come in the restricted area here. The fact that he can shoot the 3, get down low, and not take mid-range jumpers from 16 feet to the 3-point line is just 2.6% of his shot diet. Those 10 to 16-foot mid-range jumpers, which are not great, are just 7% of his shot diet. So he is taking smart shots, and he's hitting them well. In the restricted area, so basically at the rim, he's shooting 60%. He's just doing really well, y'all. Like, he's been playing exceptionally well, I think, for what he is. His usage rate isn't too high, so he can fit around Zion Williamson. And that goes to the point that we were talking about in the last segment here. It's still the Zion show until we're told otherwise. And Antonio Reeves looks like a guy that is going to fit around Zion Williamson really, really well. And that's what you need here. This team still has salary cap issues. It hasn't changed. It's going to need to be addressed. You need cheap guys that can help you out. And Antonio Reeves is a player that can do that. Next year, he's making under $2 million. After that, the final year of his 3-year contract, he's making $2.3 million on a team option. That is very, very valuable, in my opinion, for a player that fits pretty dang well around Zion Williamson. And you look at him over the past couple of games, right? He had that 34-point game earlier on in the season, way earlier on in the season back in November, showing that like the dude can play. His minutes have been up and down, but last game, the start in the win over Charlotte, he had 16 points. I don't know, I'll take that on 4 of 5 from 3. Game before that, he was a little bit quiet, playing fewer minutes for whatever reason. The loss to the Warriors, it's fine. 5 points there. Game before that, Philly in the win. Not that you want those, but whatever. 17 points. He made 5 of 7 from 3. And at one point, he'd gone on a pretty decent run of just making his 3-pointers. So when you look at the way that he has been playing, especially as of late, playing a style of basketball that will really fit around the team's star player, you're really encouraged about the development from him and that draft pick. And as a small market team, you need to hit on, those picks around the edges, in my opinion. And I was pretty high on Antonio Reeves coming into this draft. I thought he wouldn't get drafted, would be an undrafted free agent, and wanted the Pelicans to pick him up, and did that in a mock draft exercise. So when they traded up to get him in the second round, looked good. Look, he's got decent size at 6'5". He's not a good defender, but what rookie second round pick other than Herb Jones is really going to be. So I think you look at him and just go, yeah, like this is a dude who just fits. Look, he's a little bit older as a rookie. He's 24. But sometimes you just need good basketball players on cheap contracts that complement your star guys. And that is someone that I think they have in Antonio Reeves. He just moves well. He moves really well. And I think that's sometimes an important thing. You watch him play and you're like, oh, that guy belongs. And sometimes it's just, we can point to the stats. We can point to the shooting. Sometimes it's just, you got to watch a dude and you go, oh yeah, like that guy gets it. That guy is definitely someone that I think can fit well on this team. And it just jumps out at you. Look, another guy that kind of shows some of that too, I think, is Keon Brooks Jr., the game winner basically against the Charlotte Hornets the other night. Not, again, that we want that, but this is someone who per 36 minutes on a two-way deal, 7 games played, 1 game started here, per 36 minutes is 15 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 2 assists. He's shooting 43% from the field. Not on as many attempts as Antonio Reeves is, but at 6'7", he's got decent size to play, on the wing, I think, for this team. And the rebounding from him has actually been fairly impressive, I think. And when you look at what he's doing there from that position, that'll work. Now, on all of these, so Antonio Reeves, 17 points last game, 11 in the game against the Warriors, 10 in the win against Philly there. If you look at that, for those 3 games, he's shooting really, really well from 3 here. He's shooting 50% from 3, 5 of 10 during that run right there. That'll work. Now, with both of these players, there's a big asterisk that we're putting on it for right now. That is a big asterisk, but one that I'm not long-term concerned about. And that is going to be, look, someone's got to score on these teams. Someone has to score on bad teams. You want to be a little bit careful over the final 15 games, mid-March to mid-April. The final month of the regular season gets a little bit weird, and sometimes guys pop off, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be really, really good players going forward. Y'all remember Christian Wood in the aftermath of the Anthony Davis trade request? Played really well for the Pelicans and then just never really kind of lived up to that like later on, or being the type of player that you could truly rely on. That's kind of exactly that. So you've got to keep that in mind when you look at some of these standout performances. Playing well against Philly, playing well against Charlotte. Look, you throw me out there, I can't do that. So there's something to be said for it, right? Certainly. But that doesn't mean you're going to be an elite player. But I think the way you see Antonio Reeves move, some of the plays that Keon Brooks Jr. has made, those are guys that I'd be interested in giving bigger roles potentially to next season. Keon Brooks Jr., could convert him or just sign him in the offseason, whatever it might be. But he has looked pretty good. So there is maybe something there with both those guys that's worth exploring a little bit more. And I'm excited. Look, if you're looking for things to watch here, keep that someone's got to score on these teams, point in mind. But I'm excited to watch those guys. They've been fun to watch so far, and the team probably isn't going to win anymore. So we got to look for silver linings when it comes to this sort of thing. I think those two guys definitely can be that. So let's get back to tanking. Coming up here next, what if you guaranteed the 2 worst teams record-wise, the 4th and 5th picks in the draft? How does that change things? And you're probably thinking like, wait, what? I'll explain. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Look, I don't care about the tanking. There's nothing like watching basketball live. I love the energy of the crowd, just the noises and everything. If If you want to catch a game in person, there's a couple more here for New Orleans. Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. And Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. So you can just get on the Game Time app, and there's going to be amazing deals on everything you're looking for. It's not just sporting events. It's concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And Game Time Picks even highlights the super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. The new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff to show you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. And they got peace of mind for you. Seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guarantee you can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason. And don't forget about Locked On Saints. Owner meetings going on right now. Rule changes. They're going to impact the black and gold. Ross Jackson's there in person. Boots on the ground, covering it all for you over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's talk a little bit more about tanking as we wrap up. This is a pretty wild idea, and I'm going to be honest, I love it. We talked about this last week of things you could do to curtail tanking because, look, this season it's pretty bad. You know, and now with New Orleans shutting their best players down, you know, you might be saying, like, why would I go to games? And I think that's a totally valid thing to think and feel. Why would you even watch them on TV? You can just look at the box score, see if they won or lost. That's the most important thing right now, for the most part. So it gives you not an incentive to pay attention to them. And I think that sucks, right? The season was essentially over, let's call it on March 31st. It was over way before that, but now you just don't even need to watch. And that's not a fun feeling, right? Like, there's still 2 weeks left of the regular season, essentially, here. But you look at the Utah Jazz, who are like literally been fined by the NBA this season for how egregious their tanking is and doing the things that they're doing. New Orleans is shutting Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum down with injuries, right? You have Philadelphia, who needs to keep their pick in the top 6. Otherwise, it goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shut everybody down and basically not play anyone. And I don't know if they're going to win a game the remainder of the year. You had Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George, and you're now 1-9 in your last 10. Like, that's awful. You should feel ashamed for what they're doing, right? Brooklyn, they've been up and down, but just not a good team. Won some games, they're sitting 6, right? Charlotte, I think, is just bad, and they have some legitimate injuries for guys, and they shut them down. You know, Washington is not a good team. They're just bad. I don't really have a problem with what they've really done for the most part when it comes to it. You know, San Antonio's tanking a little bit. Wemby's out with a blood clot. That's legitimate, but then they decided more or less to shut De'Aaron Fox down. I don't love that, but okay. At least, you know, they have 30-something wins, so you don't feel as bad about all of that. It's really Philly. You know, Toronto's kind of one of those teams, except they've won 4 games in a row right now. So it's like Philly and some of these other teams that you're like, screw those guys. Like this, I get why they do it. Tanking's a realistic thing, but it still kind of sucks, right? Like that's the best way to put it. It just still kind of sucks. So what could you do here? And we ran down some options, and I didn't think that any of them were good options to try and curb tanking here. But what about this one that The Athletic put out? And I love this. And I'm butchering this slightly. I can't remember if it was the 3rd or 4th picks or the 4th and 5th picks. And he said, whoever wrote it, I think it was Mike something, said, you guarantee the 2 worst records the 4th and 5th pick in the draft. So in this scenario, Utah would have the 4th pick. Washington would have the 5th pick. Charlotte, New Orleans, Philly, Brooklyn, Toronto, every other lottery team has a chance at 1, 2, 3, or 4. 1, 2, 3. But the 2 worst teams don't. Would Utah be shutting down Larry Markkinen right now if there was a chance that they could escape this? No, they'd be playing him, right? Would Charlotte have shut down LaMelo Ball? Probably not. Would New Orleans have shut down Zion Williamson, or would they still be trying to pick up an extra win or two when it comes to this sort of thing? So that if you're going to the Smoothie King Center for a game, you might be able to see those guys play. What would Philly be doing right now? They'd probably be trying to get as close as possible, but now all of a sudden, if you're deliberately trying to lose games and Utah's trying to win games, you run into a problem of like, oh no, like this won't work. We might get stuck with the 4th or 5th pick. I kind of love this idea. Utah would have played Larry Markkinen far more than what they've played him this season, right? And to me, that's what this is about. Put the best product out there on the court. I think tanking is a viable strategy. I think the Pelicans should be doing it right now. But would there be a way to get Utah to play someone like Larry Markkinen, who's appeared in 47 games more this season? And the answer to that would be yes. Could they have played Walker Kessler more than 57 games? The answer to that is yes. And that's the type of thing that I think would have been a really important thing it would be a really important thing for the league to be able to look at and do. So I hope that they can find kind of a solution to this. I kind of love it, right? Like it would make a matchup between the Utah Jazz and the Washington Wizards late in the season have like insane stakes with both of them really trying to win that game. That kind of sounds fun. Philadelphia has the 22nd easiest strength of schedule going forward, and they still might not win a game. What they're doing is so bad. But they play the Wizards. You think they would be trying to win that game or the game against the Atlanta Hawks or the Chicago Bulls so that they still have a chance at the number 1 overall pick? You're telling me teams would be trying to win games to have a chance at the number 1, 2, or 3 pick? That kind of solves the problem, doesn't it? That kind of fixes the issue that we're seeing the league run into here, where it's, better just to put out an absurdly bad product on the court. And look, New Orleans is going to do the same thing. Let's not pretend that, some of these rosters that, starting lineups that you're going to see are impressive or anything like that. As excited as I am to see these guys play, I'm a bit of a basketball junkie and sicko when it comes to it, right? That's not what everyone is looking for. And that doesn't help your overall identity, brand, and any of those sorts of things. So I'm excited. I love this idea. I haven't found another method that I like at all when it comes to it, but I absolutely love this idea of ways to get teams to compete and do all of that and kind of fix tanking a little bit. Guarantee the 4th and 5th pick to the teams with the worst and second worst records in the NBA. I think it would be a lot of fun. I think that fixes a lot of issues. I'm sold on this one. Sold on this idea working. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. It's been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow to talk some coaching stuff. Not going to be the episode you expect, maybe in a good way. It's coming up here tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. See y'all next time.